Section 1. Awakening isn't beautiful, it's confrontational. When you awaken, truly awaken, you stop fitting in. Not because you've changed into someone better, but because the world around you still worships illusion. You see, spiritual awakening is not a glowing halo. It's a burning fire. It consumes your false identities, your borrowed beliefs, and the masks you once wore just to be accepted. And when the fire of truth begins to burn inside you, something strange happens. People start reacting differently. They pull away. They get defensive. They project. Because your presence alone exposes their ego. You don't even have to say anything. You simply being yourself. Calm, detached, observant. Feels like a silent mirror they can't escape. It reflects every insecurity, every false narrative, every shadow they've tried to suppress. Alan Watts once said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." And that's what the ego fears most. Being seen for what it truly is. An illusion trying to prove it's real. When you awaken, you start to see people's egos. Not in judgment, but in awareness. You notice the lies people tell themselves. You sense their need to dominate conversations, to prove their worth, to constantly perform for approval. You see through the game. But here's the dangerous part. Once you stop playing, they will resent you for it. Because your stillness reveals their noise. Your peace reveals their chaos. Your lack of reaction threatens their control. And suddenly, you become the villain in their story. Not because you did something wrong, but because you're no longer feeding their illusions. Spiritual awakening doesn't make you superior. It makes you silent. And silence terrifies the ego. Because the ego survives on attention, the fuel of reaction, argument, and emotional chaos. When you refuse to engage, you starve it. You'll notice it in subtle ways. People will pick fights over small things. They'll twist your calm into arrogance. They'll accuse you of being cold or emotionless. But in truth, you've just learned how to stop being manipulated by emotional chaos. It's not that you don't feel anymore. It's that you don't cling anymore. You've stopped worshipping drama. You've stopped trying to fix others. You've stopped confusing attachment with love. And that, to the unconscious mind, feels like betrayal. But remember this. The moment you awaken, you stop belonging to the crowd. And that's the price of freedom. To walk alone through a world still asleep, knowing that your very presence will awaken something uncomfortable in those who fear the mirror of truth. Section 2. The mirror effect. Why your peace triggers their chaos. When a person who is ruled by ego looks at someone who is awake, they don't see peace. They see rejection. Your calmness doesn't soothe them. It insults them. Because your stillness silently whispers, "I don't need your validation." And to the ego, that is the greatest threat of all. You see, the ego doesn't survive through peace. It survives through conflict. It needs to feel in control. It needs to be right. It needs to dominate attention. And when it can't, it feels like it's dying. So when you come along, someone who doesn't take the bait, someone who doesn't argue to prove a point, someone who simply sees through the game, you become unbearable to those who haven't met themselves yet. This is called the mirror effect. Every insecure person, every reactive mind, projects their inner chaos onto others. And when they look at you, calm, grounded, observant, you become a mirror that reflects everything they're trying to hide. their impatience, their envy, their lack of purpose, their emotional instability. Your silence forces them to feel it all. They can't stand that reflection, so they attack it. They mock it. They call it cold, unemotional, arrogant. But what they're really saying is, your peace reminds me of the chaos I refuse to face. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." When someone tries to pull you into their emotional storm, the moment you react, they win. They've pulled you into the world of ego. They've made you forget your center. But when you remain still, unshaken, unprovoked, you reveal something more powerful than words. Mastery. That's why the truly awakened man or woman doesn't need to prove anything. They don't need to defend their worth. They don't need to explain their boundaries. They embody it. And that embodiment irritates every false personality around them. Because authenticity is a silent weapon. It cuts through the illusions people build their lives upon. The moment you detach from the game of emotional reaction, you step into a different dimension, one that feels lonely at first, but becomes liberating once you understand it. Because here's the truth. It's not your job to wake others up. It's your job to stay awake yourself, to protect your peace like sacred ground, to understand that every act of non-reaction is an act of power. Ego-driven people can't handle silence, because silence doesn't feed them. It starves them. It confronts them with their own emptiness. And when you stand there, unbothered, they'll do anything to make you react, because a reaction would mean they still have power over you. So remember this. Your peace will offend those who thrive on drama. Your self-control will threaten those addicted to control. And your awareness will confuse those who live asleep. You are not responsible for their discomfort. You are responsible for your clarity. You are responsible for your response or lack of it. And that, my friend, is how you begin to master the art of spiritual detachment in a chaotic world. Section 3, The Hidden Cost of Awakening, Isolation and Inner Power. When you begin to awaken, you lose people. You lose friends. You lose connections you once thought were unbreakable. You start to realize that most of what you called relationships were actually attachments built on shared illusions. You used to belong, but now you see how belonging often means betraying yourself. This is the silent cost of awakening. The moment you start seeing through the games, you can no longer play them. You can't laugh at meaningless gossip anymore. You can't pretend to care about shallow pursuits. You can't drown yourself in distractions just to fit in. And that's when the world begins to turn its back on you. Not because you did something wrong, but because your truth exposes their comfort. The spiritually awake person becomes a quiet storm. They don't need to shout. Their presence alone makes others question themselves. And most people aren't ready for that. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." When you begin to live by this rule, you stop being understood by the masses. You begin walking alone. But this solitude is not a punishment. It's a purification. Because only in silence do you hear your real thoughts. Only in loneliness do you find your real strength. And only in the absence of validation do you discover that you don't need it. You see, the ego feeds on noise, but the spirit grows in silence. When everyone leaves, You begin to meet the only person who never does, yourself. And that is where true power is born. Not from the applause of others, but from the unshakable knowing that your peace is worth more than their approval. Seneca said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you. But when you can't find them, become them." Your isolation becomes your training ground. Your silence becomes your meditation. Your detachment becomes your discipline. Because the world tests you with loneliness before it trusts you with leadership. Understand this. Those who are spiritually awake are not superior. They are simply more aware. And awareness comes with a price. The pain of seeing what others refuse to see. You'll watch people chase empty desires. You'll see how pride destroys relationships. You'll witness manipulation disguised as love. And you'll realize you can't save them. Because awakening can't be forced. It must be chosen. So instead of forcing understanding, you focus on alignment. You stop chasing people and start building peace. You stop seeking validation and start embodying truth. That's the paradox. The more you awaken, the less you need. The less you chase, the more you attract. The less you prove, the more powerful you become. And that's the secret the world doesn't tell you. Isolation isn't a curse. It's initiation. You are not being abandoned. You are being refined. You are being prepared for something higher, something cleaner, something divine. Because those who can walk alone are the ones who can lead without fear. And those who find peace in solitude are the ones who can't be controlled. So don't mourn the distance between you and the world. Honor it. That distance is your proof that you've grown, that you've begun to see beyond the illusions, that you've remembered who you are, beyond the noise, beyond the crowd, beyond the ego. Section 4, the battle between ego and spirit, how people react to your light. When you awaken, you begin to disturb something ancient in others. Their ego. The ego doesn't want peace. It wants control. It feeds on drama, comparison, superiority, and fear. And when your calm enters the room, when your eyes no longer seek approval, when your energy stops begging to be understood, the ego in others panics. Because your peace exposes their chaos. Your detachment reveals their neediness. Your confidence threatens their insecurity. It's not that they hate you. They hate the reflection of themselves that your presence reveals. This is the war between ego and spirit. And it doesn't happen on a battlefield. It happens in silence, in glances, in subtle energy. The Stoics knew this. Epictetus said, "When someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval." That line is more than philosophy. It's armor. Because once you awaken, you must stop expecting others to understand you. The moment you do, you give them power. Remember, most people are not ready to see reality naked. They live in comfort illusions, believing success is status, love is validation, and worth is measured by attention. So when you step outside of that matrix, you become a glitch, a mirror that exposes everything false. They might call you cold. They might say you've changed. They might say you're arrogant, detached, or emotionless. But what they're really saying is, you no longer feed my ego. And that's their truth to face, not yours. The ego wants reaction. The spirit wants reflection. The difference between the two is everything. When someone insults you, their words are not about you. They're projections of their own inner war. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. So when they lie about you, stay silent. When they envy you, stay kind. When they misunderstand you, stay calm. Because silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Stillness isn't apathy, it's mastery." You see, emotional detachment is not about being numb. It's about being so aware that nothing can drag you from your center. It's choosing observation over reaction. It's seeing through manipulation without needing to destroy it. The ego feeds on resistance. If you fight it, it grows. If you ignore it, it starves. And this is what few understand. The more conscious you become, the less you need to defend yourself. Because truth doesn't argue. It simply is. A lion doesn't need to explain to the sheep why it roars. It just roars. In the same way, when you walk in peace, when you've faced your shadows and forgiven yourself, your light speaks louder than any defense. That's why truly awakened souls speak less and see more. They can feel manipulation before it's spoken. They can sense dishonesty in silence. They can see the mask behind the smile, because they've removed their own. And that's the irony. The moment you become real, the world starts calling you fake. Because authenticity has become rebellion. But let them talk. Let them project. Let them misunderstand. Every reaction from others is proof of your transformation. You don't need their validation. You only need your alignment. The ego collapses in the presence of someone who can't be moved. And that, my friend, is real power. Because power isn't loud. It's quiet. It's controlled. It's knowing you could destroy, but choosing to remain still. It's smiling in the face of envy. Not because you're naive, but because you understand that those who attack light are simply afraid of their own darkness. So when your awakening irritates others, don't shrink. It means you've entered the next stage of evolution. When your energy teaches more than your words ever could. Section 5, the final test, living awake in a sleeping world. Here's the final truth. Awakening isn't a destination. It's a quiet war that never ends. When you awaken, the world doesn't suddenly become peaceful. You do. But that peace comes with a cost. You will begin to see things others cannot. You'll see how people chase approval and call it love. You'll see how they worship distraction and call it happiness. You'll see how they avoid silence because silence confronts them with their truth. You will begin to see manipulation disguised as charm, fear disguised as ambition, and loneliness disguised as connection. You will walk through crowds and feel everything. The noise, the fear, the desperation. And you'll realize most people are asleep. As Alan Watts said, we seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent. When you wake up to this, the world starts to feel like an illusion, a dream you can no longer fully believe in. You'll crave authenticity, conversations with depth, people who have faced their own darkness. And you'll find that they are rare. Because most people would rather stay in the comfort of lies than face the discomfort of awakening. That's why spiritual awakening can feel like isolation. But it's not punishment. It's purification. You are being separated from the noise so that you can hear your soul. You are being pulled away from fake love so that you can feel real peace. You are being tested, not by the world, but by the universe asking you one question. Can you remain yourself in a world that constantly tries to make you forget who you are? This is where Stoicism becomes sacred. Because the Stoic doesn't seek escape. He seeks mastery. He doesn't avoid pain. He learns from it. He doesn't chase love. He becomes love itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And when your thoughts become still, when your ego stops screaming, you start to experience something higher than happiness. You experience clarity. Clarity is power. Clarity makes you untouchable. Because when you see things as they are, no one can manipulate you with illusion. You stop chasing attention. You stop explaining yourself. You stop seeking closure. You simply live. Deeply, silently, purposefully. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You detach not because you don't care, but because you've learned that caring too much for what's out of your control is the root of all suffering. You begin to walk slower, speak less, listen more. You begin to see beauty in ordinary things. A sunset, a quiet morning, the sound of rain. Because these are the places where the awakened soul rests. And when you look around, you realize the world hasn't changed. You have. Your perception is no longer chained by ego. You no longer need validation, attention, or constant noise. You are no longer addicted to being understood. You have become peace. And ironically, that's when the right people start to appear. Those who vibrate with the same stillness. Those who see through you, not because you're transparent, but because they see through themselves too. This is the paradox of awakening. The moment you stop trying to belong, you attract those who truly belong with you. So if you feel alone, if your energy irritates others, if you find yourself walking paths few understand, you are not lost. You are ahead. You are proof that the soul can wake up in a world that's still dreaming. And as Alan Watts said, you are the universe experiencing itself. So live as one who remembers that truth. Walk softly, but with fire in your spirit. Speak gently, but with conviction in your voice. And never apologize for your evolution. Because awakening was never about escaping life. It was about becoming fully alive. So breathe deeply. Forgive freely. Detach gracefully. And rise endlessly. Because now, you are awake. Now to close the video. Speech balloon if this message resonated with you. Like the video to spread Stoic wisdom. Comment your own original motivational quote, something born from your philosophy. And turn on notifications so you never miss another Stoic Life episode.